I appreciate you joining us today. It is March 25th. Our reading comes from the book of Joshua today, Joshua chapter 10. We're going to go through chapter 12, verse 6. Chapter 10 is the account of the sun standing still, as you can see on the screen. We'll come back to that because it's the account the Gibeonites are attacked, and we spoke about them yesterday. So they're attacked and they ask for help. We'll come back to that though, and we'll read that account. But Joshua comes and helps, and it's the account where Joshua asks for the sun to stand still. Then you have the Amorites as the Lord routs them. And you have 5 Amorites. They're going to try to hide in a cave, and Joshua says, roll large stones in front of the cave. Go on about your business, whoop everybody else, and then come back and we'll deal with them. And that's exactly what happened. They were dealt with. Then you have the conquests being given and all the people that were conquered. We do see in the book of Judges, of course, that individual tribes, they didn't conquer everybody like they should. To read through Joshua, there was a lot of conquering going on, but they weren't quite as thorough as they needed to be. We'll talk about that later studies. Chapter 11, more conquests, this time up in the north, as it goes through and talks about that. Chapter 12 goes through the first 6 verses, and that's where our reading ends today. The kings defeated by Moses, and of course these are ones that were on the other side of the Jordan, on the east side of the Jordan, those few kings that were defeated there. Okay, come on back to chapter 10. And let's just start reading in verse 1, and let's just see how much I stumble over some of these names. Verse 1, Now it came to pass when Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, heard how Joshua had taken Ai and had utterly destroyed it, as he had done to Jericho and its king, so he had done to Ai and its king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them, that they feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city, like one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai. And all its men were mighty. Therefore Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, sent to Hoham, king of Hebron, Piram, king of Jarmuth, Japhia, king of however you say it. He says, Come up to me and help me, verse 4, that we may attack Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and with the children of Israel. Therefore the 5 kings of the Amorites, king of Jerusalem, king of Hebron, all those other kings, they come up, they and all their armies, and they camped before Gibeon, made war against it. And the men of Gibeon sent to Joshua at the camp at Gilgal, saying, Do not forsake your servants. Come up to us quickly. Save us. Help us. For all the kings of the Amorites who dwell in the mountains have gathered together against us. So Joshua ascended from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. Verse 8, The Lord said to Joshua, Do not fear them, for I have delivered them into your hand. Not a man of them shall stand before you. Joshua therefore came upon them suddenly, having marched all night from Gilgal. So the Lord routed them before Israel, killed them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, chased them along the road that goes to Beth Horon, and struck them down as far as those 2 cities. It happened as they fled before Israel, and were on the descent of Beth Horon, that the Lord cast down large hailstones from heaven on them as far as Azekah, and they died. There were more who died from the hailstones than the children of Israel killed with the sword. Then Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel, and he said, In the sight of Israel, sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Ajalon. So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped. We'll come back to that. So, wanted to just talk about the Gibeonites again. Spoke about them yesterday. And, of course, they deceived Israel, but Israel has to keep their word. So they are now dwelling in Israel. They picked a side. That's what they did. And frankly, they picked the right side. I don't like how they went about it, but there it is. Now they're in there, and Israel has to keep their word. They picked a side. And anytime you pick a side, you're going to be attacked. You can't please everybody. You gotta pick a side. And when you pick a side, you're going to be attacked. And Gibeon was attacked. And I appreciate them because even though they were deceptive with Israel, it was like one of the royal cities. They came and they honestly say at the tail end, "We are your servants, do as you wish." That was a royal city, and all of the men there, it speaks about them. Um, all the men were mighty. It was greater than Ai. All the men were mighty, and yet they send those men to Israel, to Joshua, and say, "We're your servants." They picked a side, and in picking a side, they soon found themselves attacked. That's what happens. So what do? They ask for help, and that's what we have to do. We have to be willing to ask for help, and we have to be willing to help. Joshua real easily could have said, "Nah, you guys tricked us. We'll just let whatever happen happen. Whatever happens, happens." Joshua didn't do it. They kept their word, and Joshua was loyal. And he goes. When they called, when they asked for help, Joshua went. And the Lord said, "Don't be afraid of them." And the route was on. And we'll say this. My third point is God can handle it all on his own. Let's just say hypothetically that Joshua didn't come. God could have dealt with the Amorites all on his own, because as you see, as the battle commenced, the Lord cast down, the Lord killed more of them than Israel did with the hail that fell from heaven. Large hailstones fell from heaven, and there were more who died from the hailstones than the children of Israel killed with a sword. Frankly, the Lord could have handled this all on his own if he wanted to, and he could have just wiped them off the map. And we have to remember that. Even if nobody else helps us, the Lord can handle it. The Lord's more than capable of handling it. And so we're faithful, and we cry out to the Lord. This is one of those verses, and the reason I left off when I did, this is one of those verses in verse 12 and 13 that sometimes folks will use for showing the power of prayer. And it's a good verse for that, showing the power of prayer. As Joshua prayed that the sun would stand still. But it's usually it's used as one of those, the power of prayer and self-help, feel good, sort of verses. And sometimes people forget the reason that Joshua asked for the sun to stand still was, as it says, verse 13, "And the moon stopped till the people had revenge upon their enemies." The whole reason that Joshua asked for the sun to stand still was so that the enemies of Israel could be killed. That was why that prayer was made. And that doesn't usually fit into most people's ideas of touchy, feel-good sort of stuff. But that's what the prayer was for. And the Lord answered the prayer. So, anyway, it's an interesting account as Gibeon, and to really key in on the Gibeonites, they were attacked because of the choice they made. They asked for help, and God also helped. We'll put it like that. God could have handled it all on his own, but Joshua comes to their defense. He was loyal, and that's what we need to do as well when people need help. Hope the study's been helpful for you. Appreciate you. Hope you have a good day. Hope you join us for our next brief look into God's Word.